Thanks, Anya.
Kia ora koutou. Just firstly, big thanks to the CreativeMornings team.
Huge thank you, guys. Thank you.
And the wider team. It's exactly these sorts of events that I guess started me on my journey. But better yet, thank you all for showing up in a very full tech week as well. I'm Fraser.
I'm Ossie.
And this is Ossie. And we're co-founders of Choice, the blockchain social enterprise that you will shortly hear a little bit more about. But just before we do, we thought we'd run through a little bit about our backgrounds and how we started on this journey and really started committing to the impact that we are now making. And then we'll tell you a bit more about Choice.
Awesome. So I guess I'll kick that off. My story starts pretty far away. It starts in Baghdad, Iraq, where I was born. My father met my mother in the war. He was a military doctor and she was a nurse. They met during the war, and about a year later they had myself. When I was just 6 months old, they decided that in the midst of the Gulf War, they would flee the country illegally. So they drove 1,000 miles across the desert in a beat-up old GMC, crossed the border to Jordan illegally, where they then waited 18 months to arrive to their next destination. They didn't know where it would be. The line for the visa queue for Australia was quite long, apparently, and my dad's friend said this place, New Zealand, which was basically Australia, was way easier to get into at the time. And so he said, sweet, did that, and came here absolutely not knowing the language or anything like that, with about $5,000 in their pocket. As they were flying in, my dad looked over to see a field of cows beside Auckland Airport, which was about 20 years ago. My mum asks him how it looks, and he turns back and he just says, it looks great. Upon landing, it was raining heavily, and my mother had never seen rain before. There's only mist really in the desert. And she sat in the terminal and refused to leave the building and just started absolutely bawling her eyes out and said she wanted to go home. My dad then dragged her into a taxi and took her somewhere where they could sleep. He spent the next 6 months busing into Grafton every day and studying for his entry exam for medical practice in New Zealand. He was one of 2 of 50 that passed that year, them having spent their very last cents on the exam fees, which were very high. So it was due to that amazing commitment that I'm here today. And what I've learned from that is that you can truly create something from nothing. You can manifest your own life and your own being out of absolutely nothing if you want to. And if that all gets taken away from you, you can rebuild that. You really can. And so I guess throughout my career and my whole time working, it's given me the ability to create that value. And as I've gone throughout my career, I started asking myself, like, who and what and why is that value being created, and who is it being created for? And so over time, a couple of the businesses that I've founded, over time the projects that I've been involved in have become more towards social good, wellness, and trying to change the world for better. And that brings me on to Fraser.
Righto. So I was a bit of a zigzag in my journey. I did start out as a mechanical engineer. Quickly figured out that whatever sort of system I owned or refined, it wouldn't matter if the management upstairs didn't see eye to eye. So I found this big word instead. 2 big words actually. Management consulting. And I was like, that's it. That must be it. I had no idea what it was. I was like, so I jumped into a corporate job. I actually worked for PwC for a whole year. And like this guy over here, I was actually wearing a suit, of which many of my friends now wouldn't believe. Now, this piece I've been trying to actually talk about a lot more, because I think it's important that people talk about these sorts of things. But on the first day of my corporate job, or the day before my first day, kind of the worst thing in the world happened. We talk about bad things happening. This was like the worst possible thing I could imagine. And my best friend at the time, he passed away. There was an incident on a skateboard. Yet it was, at the time it was, kind of shocking to the core. This opened my eyes, it completely opened my eyes, and walking into this job and everything I do, I now question that with reason. Like, why am I doing this? What is the actual purpose behind it? And so when I walked into this corporate life, I was questioning everything, absolutely everything about it. And it was pretty quick to figure out that I was only going to be there a short amount of time. And I actually used that as my runway into something that I found a lot more purpose in, which was the startup world. And so I ventured into that, and I really tried to find something I really cared about, and with others, I really sat down and wanted to do something that wasn't about the money and was actually about the bigger picture for Aotearoa. And that's where I came to the fruition of Squawk Squad. It came out of a startup weekend, and that's really helping save the native birds of New Zealand by marrying conservation with the technology space. And then moving on from there, in parallel with that, Upstream Daily, which was interviewing people or people that were challenging their typical career path, because I felt like that needed to be opened up for more to see. On the way there, I was also wanting to have purpose within my life as well. And so I was questioning what I was doing in Auckland, paying a lot of rent, and I wanted to move to a place I really cared about. So I moved down to Wanaka and worked there for the winter. To make that possible, I lived in a caravan with a friend, with a co-founder at the time of Upstream Daily, and actually the third co-founder of choice as well. And so, being purposeful in my life, but also my work. I even took that commitment from earning little money in a social enterprise and at the early stages of it to the next level. When I moved back to Auckland, I ran an experiment of what would it look like if I lived in a tent in my friend's backyard. And I did that over the summer, and I was living off, at that stage, started diving down the blockchain rabbit hole, and I was living off crypto, small portions of crypto in my backyard, my friend's backyard, which I thought was a pretty sweet setup in my tent. Others might argue with that, but that's the sort of, I guess, I look at that as like a gradual progression, but that's the sort of, I guess, commitment I may have gone to really create the impact that I was looking at. So then that led on to diving down this blockchain rabbit hole in a new advanced technology that myself and our third co-founder were just hugely interested in. And then that comes on to when we met Ossie. Actually, my ex-girlfriend at the time, her dad, invited us to a talk at a VC firm, a blockchain talk around the regulation space. He knew that we loved blockchain, so he invited us along. We showed up on our skateboards, backwards caps, and these guys in suits were sitting around, and kind of a lot of the blockchain was just, the talk was going over their heads, and what it ended up was a three-way conversation with myself, Alex, and then Ossie, who was actually giving the presentation at the time. And we saw this guy who was incredibly switched on, knew his technical skills from back to front and the space, and that's where we caught up with Ossie after that.
Absolutely, and that's where the boys came to me after that. Everyone in the room not really understanding blockchain and wanting to make NZ dollars out of it somehow. I was like, you guys, this was maybe 9 months ago, maybe 9 months ago. I was like, you guys could probably do like an ICO or something like that. It doesn't have to be anything really, that spectacular, and you can probably garner a lot of cryptocurrency from that if you guys want. And they were like, no, we don't believe in cryptocurrency. How do we get NZD? And I was like, well, it's not very clear. If you guys want to use blockchain, you kind of have to get some of that underlying asset. And it's funny now because they are doing ICOs, aren't they? Anyway, it ended up with me talking to these guys basically in the room, just us three having a three-way convo. And afterwards, they were like, do you want to catch up and talk about blockchain? And I was like, sure thing. And what was really interesting when I caught up with these guys, we all know what the blockchain platform is. It's a very globally scalable platform for disintermediation of everything. It's a trustless system. It allows us to put all kinds of, it's a trustless ecosystem, perfect place to store value on and transfer value on it. And it's up to us basically to choose what kind of value we want to store on these ecosystems. So whether that's traditional capital or more intrinsic forms of value like our identities, etc., and our data, or things like supply chain. That's up to us to choose. And so when I caught up with Fraser and Alex, they said something that I hadn't heard from anyone in the blockchain space was, what if we used blockchain to create social impact? And I was like, well, actually, that sounds brilliant. Like, let's do something. Let's do it together.
For us, it was really about a fast-moving industry, a lot of wealth moving around it. And we'll give you, if you want to know more about blockchain, we can have the Blockchain 101 talk another time. But it's a fast-moving industry, a lot of wealth being made, and it was really the underlying technology that we were interested in. We knew that it wasn't hype for no reason. It was really, what is this technology good for? And so we questioned the fact, how can we use this advanced technology for some real social good, not just in Aotearoa, but beyond. And that's where this all really started. So that brings us on to choice. Choice really started with looking at some hugely significant societal issues in Aotearoa. And you look at New Zealand, and we have the highest youth suicide rate in the developed world. 80% of our bird species are threatened with extinction, and 1 in 3 of our children live below the income poverty line. These are all hugely significant issues. And yet on the other side, we jump to another extreme and we look at the payment space within New Zealand. And currently, we have in 2016, $500 million left New Zealand in the form of transaction fees that went off to international credit card companies, the likes of Visa and MasterCard. That doesn't add any value to our economy. That leaves our shores and goes off to somebody else. So we actually asked the question, how can we bridge this gap? How can we bridge these two extremes and take wealth from one end and actually give that back to New Zealand's economy and our local communities in the form of charities?
That's right. And out of the other side came the idea of choice. And a huge shout out to Paul Salisbury from Blockchain Labs, who's in London at the moment. We basically ran a pitch deck past him, or an idea, and Paul was like, well, I can get you in front of a few people to talk about this, because no one's really talking about social impact using blockchain either. So he kind of saw the same thing, which was amazing. And so in a few weeks, we had kind of pulled something together and kicked off the KFA Accelerator, which we've just wound up.
So Kiwi Bank FinTech Accelerator.
That's right.
Creative HQ.
That's right. Huge shout out to those guys as well.
So yeah, as Anya had said at the start, Choice is a new payment system, a contactless payment system. It all just from your phone. You scan a QR code at the counter rather than paying with a debit or bank card, and basically the transaction fees for Kiwi businesses are decreased, and then we redistribute half of that fee to a charity of the consumer's choice, so that every time that you pay, you can actually pay with social impact rather than watching that money leave our shores. It doesn't cost the consumer anything more. You're just choosing where this transaction fee goes instead. And so we had a commitment to what we were doing as well. We had a commitment within Choice. Instead of watching in the blockchain space where you have an idea, you have then ICO, which is basically a means of raising a lot of money for tokens, and you would have seen that across the cryptocurrency space. People go out and they raise $20, $40 million off a lot of hype from a lot of global investors, and they don't even have a product out to market. They've got nothing tangible. And we thought that was crap. We thought that was not sustainable, and we thought we had a commitment to actually being purposeful in what we did. And everything in Choice comes back to our kaupapa of actually empowering people to pay with impact. And not only that, we wanted something tangible out to the market, and we were moral in the amount that we were going to raise. So we wanted to only, if we were going to utilize this wealth in the blockchain space, only raise an appropriate amount, not excess.
That's exactly right.
And about halfway through this process, we found ourselves in the dumps, and at the very bottom, basically. Fraser and Alex found themselves, their bank accounts basically hit zero. I know Fraser spent his last $7 on a milkshake from Wendy's. That's our other co-founder, Alex. They found themselves sleeping on a good friend's floor. Yeah. And about a week before that, the Zoom isn't quite right on there, but I broke my leg in 3 places. and had to go back to Auckland and work remotely, basically, from there.
That was all on a Friday. I remember sitting down while sleeping on our friend's couch and going, yeah, this is kind of, $0 in the bank account, we don't have a roof, co-founder's busted leg, our lead developer, who we had been waiting for like the last kind of 2 months really brewing into hiring somebody, also just rejected our offer. And we were like, that really, a lot kind of depended on that. That was the Friday, and I guess this is where commitment really kicks in. It's all easy to talk about commitment when everything's simple and well, right? But it's hard to talk about commitment when the shit hits the fan and you've really got to ask yourself why you're doing these things. And I guess that commitment to impact of what we had as a vision and purpose for Choice, that's what really, of course, kept us in the game. So that was about halfway through Cafe, and I remember the Monday, everything came right. And I do love this notion of it all works out in the end, and if it doesn't, it's not the end. So unfortunate position, we managed to raise, so not quite that Monday, it was a bit before, but we managed to raise $1 million of non-equity funding from an offshore blockchain company from Singapore, the NEM Foundation. We had 3% of their global community vote for our proposal and support Choice and the social impact we wanted to create globally. And so 3% of their global network voted for that. And that was huge to have their support. And I don't talk about $1 million for the sake about talking of $1 million. I talk about it because we can show that you can actually raise money towards a purposeful cause. It's not just about making more money, but it's actually about, for that, $1 million of non-equity funding is actually, could be the most non-equity fund raised for a seed stage startup in New Zealand. And I would say almost definitely a social enterprise startup within New Zealand. And that's the importance of what has happened there. And I guess on that Monday we were then we turned that cryptocurrency into real fiat New Zealand dollars. We managed to find a place to stay. We found a new developer who's an absolute guru, Ben, he's amazing, and he's come on board. Aussie's leg was still broken.
It's on the mend now, guys. You can all rest assured that it's on the mend. And yeah, so just on that's part of why we started Choice, is because these boys taught me about social enterprise, which was a new concept to me, and I thought it was incredible. Charities shouldn't be chastised for making a profit or investing in what might create an impact long term. You guys will have started to hear about things like B corporations and things like that. That's brilliant. Where your stakeholders aren't just your shareholders, but it's written into your constitution and your foundation that your stakeholders might be the entirety of New Zealand. In our case, it's our charities, it's our merchants, and it's our people having that choice. And so, yeah, we think that charities shouldn't be chastised for making a profit and then reinvesting that. What would you think about a charity that made $1 billion of revenue that then donated half of that and spent the other half on keeping the best people engaged and employed and spreading the message, versus a charity that raised $10 million a year and gives 90% of that to the cause? So we think that if you can do so and create more wealth, more transparently, who are you taking that off? You're taking that off for-profit companies if you do it right. So that's our commitment to staying purposeful, tangible, and moral. And so that leads into the big idea with Choice, is that we believe that using this blockchain technology, that social impact itself is a currency. Nowhere in the world is there an agreed standard for the measurement of social impact. The UN, the WHO, etc. have tried for many years. Different researchers have tried. We might give it a crack ourselves at one point and try to create a standard for measurement of social impact and turn that into a currency. So by people helping people, that can create the wealth.
And just on that note, where Choice is at now, last week we came to the end of KiwiBank FinTech Accelerator. Once again, a bit of a commitment there. Alex and I returned from a blockchain conference in New York on Tuesday morning. We pitched on Wednesday to a bunch of investors in New Zealand's FinTech community. And then Thursday we had our product launch of Choice's first closed 2-day trial of actually having a tangible product out to market, which is actually rare in the blockchain space with all the hype. And you were able to purchase one product from Moss Caf at the bottom of Kiwi Bank's corporate building. And we had a huge success of having $600 worth of coffee bought and a whopping $4 of donation to Kiwis for Kiwi, helping save our national icon. Now that doesn't seem like much, but that's 2 days, one cafe, one product. That's a very important $4 to us. So we're very excited about that and to actually have something real out in the market. This week and next have been spent strategizing for the next sort of 6 to 18 months, and we're really excited about where we can take this.
Definitely. And so the 3 things that we want you guys to walk out of this room and remember is that you can create, you can manifest something from nothing. You truly can. And even if it's starting again from the beginning or losing everything, you really can create something great. You have the power to do so. All of you have that.
And to be committed, you need to listen to yourself. You actually need to listen to yourself as to what you think your purpose is, what you or where you want to head, and really trust yourself and back yourself in that commitment. You all absolutely have the power to do it, but you've got to deliberately think about what that might be. It's not magically going to appear in front of you. And the last one is that you have to start now. If you have anything fostering in your heads about what you might want to do, the stars aren't going to magically align. It's not going to, you're not going to wake up and go, today's the perfect day. It's now that you've got to start, you know. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. So commit to that impact, commit to whatever it might be, whatever version of impact you might be creating, commit to that now. Thanks guys, kia kaha.